It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at a new fanzine called The Oracle. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look, and today, from July of 1982, it is The Oracle #1. Hope you enjoy the video. So I'm really excited today to take a look at a brand new fanzine. This is from the United States. It's called The Oracle. Obviously, we're starting with issue #1. This is put together by Chris Bigelow, and it's just a regular sized piece of paper folded in half. It's not even heavy stock, it's just light blue paper all the way through. And he puts this together. He's a young guy, he's in high school. He puts this together, he gets a little bit of help from his father, who uses his dad's word processor. And we know a lot about this particular fanzine because more recently there is a hardbound book, which if you can get a copy, do it. And these are really hard to find. So the book, which is also hard to find, is probably your best bet. And it has essays in it, and it has information, and a little bit of history, as well as copies of all of the different issues of the fanzine. And again, so Chris Bigelow does this, and if you look here on the first page, he lists all these people, right? Well, only a couple of those actually did anything. Others are made-up names. So one of the things I really like about this guy in this fanzine is he's got these huge dreams. He's this teenage boy, loves D&D, wants to make his own magazine, has visions of grandeur where he's going to create, this big flashy magazine like Dragon, which is out at the time. And so he says, I need to look like a real good magazine. And so he creates this list of all these different people with different departments and jobs. He's got an assistant editor, an art director, business manager, office manager, contributing editors, consulting editors, and cover artists. I mean, I think he probably went to something like Dragon and saw what they had. And he makes all these things up to make himself sound good. And it's just fantastic. So let's take a look at the cover art. Now, this is Ryan Ridges, a friend of his, and he had drawn a lizard. And Chris goes to him and says, put wings on that lizard. I'm going to turn it into a dragon, and we're going to use that as the cover for my magazine, right? So just great, sort of very homeschooled, homebrewed art. All right, so he has this introduction page. He's got some advertising in there, and then he has his editorial where he introduces you to himself to you and talks about his magazine, right? Talks about the planning he had done. And so I mentioned briefly, he interacts with TSR because he wants to put a advertisement in the Dragon magazine. And he tells us that in his essay, in the hardbound book, the smallest one they'd sell him was $300. So he calls, talks, he sends it to him. They go back and forth a little bit about the content, and he gets it done. He has not produced his magazine yet. This is just to get subscribers, so he wants to drum up support, which he did a pretty good job at. And so one of the ways he drums up support is he says, I'll give you a free TSR product and adventure module for subscribing. And the TSR guys called him, like, hey, what's going on here? And he had a deal with the local bookstore to get an adventure module at their cost, right, the wholesale price. And so with his subscription money, about a third of that went to pay for the adventure module he's going to give you, and the other 2/3 we had to pay for his Dragon magazine article, and then advertisement, and then he had whatever was left to actually produce his magazine. But so he gets his money and he's excited. He's like, uh-oh, now I got to put this together. And so what we see is he goes through and he writes all this stuff himself with pseudonyms in there to make it sound like there's all these different contributors to his magazine. But it's really, except with one exception, it's really just him. The exception is this healer character class, which is by Ronald Mark Pehr. And he also gets a friend named Scott Passey to do the art there. And then Scott becomes his art director on account of that one contribution. A couple of people, Richard Harrington and Sasha Mornell, give spells. And then everything else is his. Justice Be Done is a D&D adventure, some movie reviews, discussion of Play by Mail gaming, Stormbringer by Chaosium review, discussion of gaming publications, some other APAs, fanzines that are out there, a dungeon design contest, a questionnaire to get feedback about who his subscribers or readers are, and this open area to get some feedback. So as I mentioned, Chris Bigelow with pseudonym basically does all this, and then we had some small contributions from other folks and a couple of pieces of art. That's pretty much it. So this is Chris Bigelow's fanzine, and we've got all of these. He did 3 and then sort of took a hiatus, and then comes back and does 2 more, and had an idea that he would do a 6th one. He had it put together, never published it, but it's all in the hardbound book, so we'll be able to take a look at all that stuff. So let's dive in here. This is the only third-party product. Ronald Mark Pehr has produced the Healer, and I would say as a character class is probably not all that fun to play. It's basically like a cleric doubled down on really only being there to heal the party. And as he says, Healer's probably more likely to be somebody, an NPC, that you want to go and hire. So his special ability here is, and he does not engage in combat at all. He absorbs or soaks the damage from your other people, and so he can essentially, he's like a walking hit point pool. He can take on the damage that your fighter takes, for example. He also has some special abilities that come on as he goes up in level. 2nd level, curing paralysis, then curing blindness, deafness, insanity, psychic damage, disease, poison, restoring your lost experience points for those of you who got too close to the undead, regenerating missing limbs, cure lycanthropy, destroying undead, removing curses, dispelling magic, restoring youth, stone to flesh, and resurrect. So as he goes up in level, he gets this added special ability. So, and he has 1d10 plus 1 hit points at 1st level, and then he gets a 1d8 after that. So there he is, the Healer. Early on class, you don't really see an iteration of this, I don't think, really anywhere else in other magazines. A couple of interesting ideas for new spells from some contributors. So Sasha Mornell has the Class Alternation spell. It's a 7th level magic user spell, and you can gain the abilities of any other class in the player's handbook. This is AD&D centric, in the player's handbook. All the restrictions apply. So if you're an elf, you can't, he says, for example, you can't be a monk. You can only be a class that your race would allow. And for a 1 round per level of the magic user, you get those extra abilities. You don't escape any restrictions. So you can become a paladin, right, if you were a human, but you couldn't wear the paladin's armor and cast spells. So you'd have to make a choice. You do retain your magic user abilities. So if you were a ranger, you'd gain, say, tracking ability. As long as you didn't wear armor, you could still cast spells. So I think it's a pretty good idea. 7th level is probably about right. It's a pretty powerful spell. It might be a little high, but I like it. The second one is called Projected Memory. It's created by Richard Harrington, 6th level spell. And this allows the caster and the other person, to experience a memory, just the 2 of them. So they'd sit there like in a trance, and everybody else is like, what's going on? If they give you consent, you can bring that back, and that would allow you to maybe focus in or catch a detail or remember what someone said or something like that. If the character, if you're role playing through it and the character is like, I can't remember what this guy told me, then this spell would let you come back and relive that memory. So pretty good. Now we have Chris's adventure under the pseudonym Daniel Struthers. It's called Justice Be Done. It's set in the town of El Caro, which is Oracle spelled backwards. And it's nearby are the Loreco Hills, right? So that's just scrambled the letters around a little bit there. So you've got a little city setting, and here's the background. Several weeks ago, a brutal murder was committed in the city. The investigation that followed discovery of the body, city guards found a man sleeping in a barn covered in blood. Also had a weapon, looked like the murder weapon. He's taken in as the prime suspect. There's a trial. He's guilty. He pleads his innocence. And now you guys are coming to town to investigate this, and as you might imagine, you're going to try and find out what really happened. So it's it's an investigation one, and no surprise when you go to investigate, there's a mine outside of town, and inside that mine, it's not empty, and so you'll go in there, investigate, figure out who's responsible, take care of the bad guys. Pretty classic adventure. It should probably just be if you're having a long session, it'd be a one-night session. If you're only playing 3 or 4 hours, it might take a couple, right? Sometimes it's sort of figuring it out stuff takes a little longer. Unless you're just murder hobos and then you go in there and just kill everything. So the next thing are movie reviews, and what I think about, well, 2 things funny. He did not like Conan the Barbarian, which I get it as a, quote, maybe good movie, maybe it's not, but it's fantastic, right? I love it. Maybe it's become sort of the cult classic as time's gone on. Other movies that he saw, E.T., which he loved, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which is a classic, and Poltergeist. I mean, those are some classic 1980s, I guess 1982 era movies. Really, really good. Play by Mail Gaming by Dave Parsons, which is also Chris. And he's explaining how play by mail games work, the kind of things you should keep in mind if you're going to play those, whether you're the designer or the player, one of which obviously is the having good pacing, but of course knowing that there's this different pace obviously than sitting at a table. He's got a review of something called The Way of the Warrior. It's a play-by-mail game set in ancient Japan, which he was a big fan of, and it's produced by Genji Games out of California. Now we have his review of Stormbringer, which again is by Chris, and it's put out by Chaosium. It obviously takes you back to the Moorcock series with Elric, right? And he liked it quite a bit, and I think we had another fanzine where someone really said they enjoyed playing this, although they found it hard to find people that were interested in playing. He goes through the different sections, player creation, different mechanics, skills, etc. And thinks in the end, it's a very fun, colorful game to play. Then we have Gaming Publications by Rick Priest, and that is Chris again. He talks a little bit about what APAs are, these which are generally the fanzines where the contributors each send in a section they've written. They have to either provide collated copies or you pay. And then they put everyone's little sort of mini fanzine together and staple it and send it out. And obviously Alarums, Excursions, the biggest example of that, but there were a few of those around the country. And so he mentions Alarums and Excursions. He mentions another one called Pandemonium, which was formerly called APA-DuD. And that one came out of New York. Next time he says he's going to talk about 2 other productions. One is called Fantasy and the other is Abyss. And I do not have, it's Fantasy, Phantasy. I have never seen a copy of that. Abyss I have a lot of, not quite all of those. Now we have his contest, and this is the first annual dungeon module competition. And he basically just says, send in your idea, and first place $50, $35, $20, and honorable mention gets you an 8-issue subscription, which they never got to issue 8. But so again, big ideas, and he wanted to encourage people to do this, and that was his contest. Then there's an advertisement, his own advertisement, and an advertisement for the Abyss. And then the other thing he had here at the end was a reader questionnaire. So he wanted to get information. First off, like, tell me about yourself. Like, what games do you play? What characters do you play? Are you a dungeon master or a player? Do you go to gaming conventions? What type of articles do you want to see in this fanzine? Do you want to see the question and answer column? Do you want to see letters? Do you want to see a place for people to swap products, get connected to each other? How do you feel about our magazine in general? And then he's got a little feedback thing here. Please rate on a scale of 1 to 10 the cover art, interior art, which if you think about it, there really wasn't very much. The headlines, the typesetting, the editorial, and then each of the different articles is listed for your feedback as well. So that is it for the Oracle #1, a really fun fanzine. I love this guy's enthusiasm. I love his excitement about creating this great magazine and how he has all these ideas of how to make it seem like it's a big publication. He was thrilled to death. He was talking to guys at TSR about being published in the Dragon. He comes out of the gate with this, and he's telling you all these great things he's going to do, but like a lot of people, it didn't last long. And thanks to the compilation book with the essays in there, we've got actual insight into sort of what was going on in his life and what happened. He does 3 issues, and then there's sort of a hiatus, and he comes back. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to do it. And then he does a couple more issues. And then there is a 6th and final issue that he actually had put together that he never actually took to the printer. But thanks to the compilation, we've got a copy of that. So we'll be able to take a look at all 6 of these issues here in the weeks ahead. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hope you're liking the series, and I hope that you are subscribed. If you've got friends who might be interested, please send them our way, and hopefully they will be subscribers as well. Have a great weekend. Until next time, keep rolling 20s.